Hi everyone, this is Natasha from Nexark here. It is so exciting to be doing another project with you today. We are continuing on with our networking series. This is project number 8, and today's topic is all about accessing S3 from a VPC. Whoa, you might be thinking, ooh, this is a different kind of topic. And it really is. So far in our networking series, we've been building a lot on our knowledge about creating multiple VPCs, and we are even monitoring it. We're even doing things like VPC peering. Today, we're actually doing a little bit of a pivot from our usual flow of building on top of what we've been doing every week, because today's project, we're actually going back to just a single VPC, but we're going to be learning a different skill. Shall we talk about this over our architecture diagram? I think that's going to help us a little bit. So, as you can see, we have just a single VPC in today's project. Phew, a little bit more simpler then, but we are going to be practicing a completely new skill, and this is why this project is called Access S3 from a VPC. All right, okay, without further ado, let's read that 30-second summary. So far, you have been an absolute pro at creating VPC architectures, launching EC2 instances inside of them. So today, we're going beyond the boundaries of a VPC. So you might be wondering, what is beyond the boundaries of a VPC? We haven't talked about this in detail yet, but there are AWS services that live outside the whole system of having VPCs and networks. EC2 instances are classic resources that we'd always use as resources that belong on the VPC. They need a VPC so that we can actually set up their access, set up their security, set up their traffic flow, set up the networking of a EC2 instance. But when it comes to other services like Amazon S3, this is a classic AWS service that lives without needing to exist inside of a VPC. So that means when you launch an S3 bucket, that S3 bucket doesn't fall into a VPC. S3 by default is accessible from the internet, so you can manage its access and its security without having to change network settings or internet gateways. So what that means is, in the world of like an AWS region, an S3 bucket just lives in your AWS region, or in a lot of services, that service or that resource just lives in the world of the internet, or lives in the world of like AWS's cloud computing space without needing to belong to a VPC. I feel like the first time you learn about that, it might be a bit of a shocker, because when we first learn about VPCs, when we first learn about networking, it feels like all of the resources we ever deploy in AWS is going to end up in a VPC, but that really isn't the case. There are services, like S3, AWS IAM, for example, an IAM user, an IAM role or a policy. There's things like Amazon Route 53. Even databases like DynamoDB can live outside of your VPC. So with that kind of context in mind, it is so important to know that engineers and companies, when you're creating some real-world solutions using AWS, you're creating an application maybe, you're combining so many different AWS services. It's usually very rarely just one service standalone that you can use to just create an entire application out of. So when you're building an application, you're combining so many different services. So resources inside your VPC, like an EC2 instance, really need to know how to work with other AWS services outside of that VPC. We've talked so much about the importance of, when you're building a VPC, don't just build the components, also build the connections between them, right? So we talk about, for example, VPC peering. How do you get two VPCs and resources inside two VPCs to talk to each other? We even talk about route tables. How can resources inside your public subnet talk to the internet? And we even talk about different components that can help, for example, resources in your public subnet talk to the private subnet. We talk about how, network ACL, security groups are all part of that. You can use ping to do connectivity tests. So in the first 6 or 7 projects in this series, we've talked so much about the importance of resources in your VPC to talk to each other and with the public internet. But what about resources in your network, in your VPC, to talk to the other AWS services that live in the public internet or live in, the world of like AWS cloud computing? How can we get them to talk to each other? That's what this entire project is going to be about. It is such a cool project. We're going to kick things off by learning how to access Amazon S3 from your VPC in this introductory project. So I hope that was very clear. And let's get started, shall we? So we're going to get ready to set up a VPC, this pink area here, and it's going to have an EC2 instance inside. And then we're going to create this very special tool called an access key. You can see this access key tagging outside at the top of the EC2 instance. And this access key is basically the key that your EC2 instance needs to get access to your AWS account, get access to your AWS resources. Now, with the power of that access key, your EC2 instance can now manage Amazon S3 buckets on your behalf. And we're going to learn what that really means and how that really works. To clarify, what's really happening is you're interacting. So you're still doing the things that you do on a management console, for example. You could like create a bucket, upload files into a bucket, rename the bucket, delete the bucket, things that you can do with your management console, you can now do just through your EC2 instance. Interesting, isn't it? So we're going to see how that happens, how that works. Awesome. So we are always going to be choosing the high touch mode when we do a step-by-step project guide together, because the high touch mode gives you step-by-step instructions for every single part of this project. It's great for beginners. If you're feeling like a challenge, if you feel like, you know what, just give me the problems, the things to solve, and I'm going to learn how to do it on my own, you can go for the low touch version. So we always go for the high touch guide, which gives you step-by-step instructions for every single part, and it's great for beginners. Awesome. Now that we're in the high touch guide for this project, let's keep on going and let's talk about what are we here to do today. Now, you might be wondering, why are we answering a question before we even start doing things in the management console? Totally get that. And really, these questions are here to help us with really feeling like we have a good understanding of what we're doing before we do it. I think whenever we're doing a project guide, whenever we're following a project, it can be easy to follow the steps, go with the flow. And having to answer these questions also forces you to have that bigger picture view. What am I doing today? Why am I doing this today? And having that understanding really levels up your learning when you're doing the project as well. Okay, so what are we here to do today? Today, I am creating a VPC, launching an EC2 instance inside that VPC, and then directly accessing that EC2 instance so that I can interact with another AWS service, which is Amazon S3, through the instance. Awesome. I think that's us. We're going to click done. And ooh, there's a little hint there. Careful, once selected, you can't edit your answer. This is true. At the moment, there's no editing your answers after you submit them. But please know we are working on a solution for that, so that even after you click done, you can edit your answers to fix a typo, to change how you explain something, so on and so forth. But for now, let's click done. All right, we're done. And then next, do you want documentation for your project today? Fill out all of the tasks. So fill out everything like that green box that we've just filled out. Fill out all of those, and you will get documentation automatically generated for you. It is amazing documentation. It collates all of your answers. as well as some screenshots that you're about to upload in today's project, and it puts them all together in one very, very neat formatted doc for you. So we are going to be doing that today. We're going to be uploading screenshots, we're going to be answering questions, and then we're going to be seeing that automatically generated documentation at the end. Cool. So we're going to do step 1 now. And in step 1, we're going to set up a VPC and an EC2 instance. We're going to set up the foundations of today's project. You're probably a pro at launching VPCs and launching EC2 instances if you've done the previous parts of this networking series. So this is probably going to be a breeze. We might, you know what, start the clock. If you've done this before, you versus me. Let's see who can do this faster. All right, what are we doing in this step? In this step, I am launching. In this step, I launch a VPC with a public subnet. You can see that it is a public subnet inside the VPC based on the diagram. I also launch an EC2 instance inside that public subnet. Perfect. And let's click done. That's what we're doing in this step. Easy as that. Oh, we didn't get to mention why. Oof, I would edit this answer if I could. And the why for this is because, first of all, your EC2 instance is going to need a VPC when it launches. It needs to be launched into a VPC, so we must create the VPC first. And the second thing is we are going to be using that EC2 instance to learn how to directly access an Amazon S3 bucket from your VPC instead of, through the AWS Management Console. So having that EC2 instance is going to be very, very important in order for us to test that access and learn how we can directly connect, actually, instead of saying directly connect, it is how we can access Amazon S3 just through the VPC alone. Cool. Next step. So let's create the VPC first. So how we're going to do that is we're going to head to the VPC console. Let us click on that beautiful search bar at the top of our AWS Management Console. And let's select VPC here. Now, before we dive any deeper, a heads up, if you don't know how to create an AWS account, the instructions to do that are at the top of the step-by-step guide. And the other thing is, please log in with an IAM user for today's project. It is especially important that we do this in this project. And if you don't have an IAM user yet, the instructions on how to create one is also in the description box. Okay, so now that we're in the VPC console, do you remember where we should go to create a VPC? Where we should go is you can click on your VPCs, or you can click on create VPC right from the dashboard. And then we're going to select VPC and more as our setting. Now, once we're here in VPC and more, let us set up the VPC itself. We're going to say the name tag auto generation is going to be Nextwork. And look at that. The moment you type in Nextwork like this, you're going to see that the names for all of the resources that this VPC and more creation tool automatically updates the names of all these components. It's just so quick and smart. It's so handy. It's just so consistent. I love this little feature, the name tag auto generation. And then we have an IPv4 CIDR block. We're just going to keep it as the default value of 10.0.0.0/16. That is all we need. And then we're going to be using how many availability zones? Let's check what the step-by-step guide says. Well, we only need one availability zone in this project. So we're just going to select one. Typically, you would set up a VPC architecture across 2 availability zones. This is called a multi-availability zone or multi-zone architecture. Some people might even say multi-AZ architecture. And that really is just having your VPC and having your subnets in multiple availability zones. This is great best practice if you're going to be creating a permanent project where you're really going to be building an application for the long term. But for a 1-hour project like this one, let's just choose one availability zone to keep things simple. And we're just going to have one public subnet and 0 private subnets. Yeah, we're going to keep things extra simple by just needing a public subnet that we're going to launch the EC2 instance into in a second. Now for NAT gateways, please make sure that you're selecting none here. Let me zoom in as well so you can see this. Please make sure you're selecting none. And also you can select none for VPC endpoints. It's extra important that we select none for the NAT gateway because NAT gateways do cost money. So we're going to want to make sure that we don't get charged. And VPC endpoints, this one, you don't get charged for it, but we're just going to select none because we don't need one. Fun though, you're going to be touching on VPC endpoints in the next project. And you're going to learn all about them in the next project. It's a really fun one. Click on Create VPC. Done. I just love how quickly it creates all of the components in a VPC for you. That was super fast. And we can click on View VPC to confirm that it's been created for us. All right. So once you're here, once you're viewing the VPC, look at that. There's even this resource map to confirm that it's created a VPC for you. It has a public subnet. Note how it says public one here. It means it's a public subnet. And then there's even 2 route tables, a default route table for the VPC, and then there's also your public route table, which is designed for public subnets. So good. And what is your public route table connected to, or what does it have a route to make it a public subnet? Do you remember this? It is Internet Gateway. Correct. So to make your subnet a public subnet, the route table must have a route to an internet gateway. This is one of the foundational things we've learned, I would say, back in the very first project or just the second project in this series. Always so cool to have all of these learnings just continue to repeat to us, continue to repeat across this entire series. Okay, so now that we've checked everything, our VPC looks very, very nice. Let us set up the EC2 instance. Oh, and I'm also gonna do one quick thing. Intermission, everyone. I just noticed that the font size looks a little bit small, doesn't it? So let's make the font size slightly bigger for us. Intermission. The behind the scenes of making this font size slightly bigger. Perfect. I think it is a bit more readable now. So now that we have created the VPC, let us launch the EC2 instance next. So what we're going to do to get there is we're going to use that handy search bar again at the very top of your AWS Management Console. And we're going to select, type in EC2. And then we're going to select EC2 under the services. Perfect. We're here now in the EC2 console. So how we're going to create an EC2 instance is again using that beautiful launch instance button. It's directly in the dashboard, or if you prefer, you can click on instances on the left-hand navigation panel. And then, oh, we don't need that anymore. That one is terminated, so this is technically what my instances page looks like. And then we're going to click on launch instances. Okay, so we're going to create an EC2 instance, and we're going to call it instance Network VPC project. And then under the Amazon machine image, make sure you're clicking on a free tier eligible one. Okay, double check that it's free tier eligible. Same with your instance type. Make sure it is free tier eligible. And when that's done, you can scroll down to the key pair login panel. And do you remember whether or not we need a key pair? If we're using EC2 Instance Connect later on, this is a question to everyone that has done the first 5-6 parts of this networking series. Do we need a key pair? So the answer is no, we don't. We can actually proceed without a key pair because EC2 Instance Connect is going to help us manage all of the key pairs for us. Usually, if we're not using EC2 Instance Connect, we are actually going to be needing a key pair in order to directly access our EC2 instance. But because we're using Instance Connect, no key pair setup needed. Let's move on. Okay, and this is an important part for us to configure. This is your EC2 instance's network settings. Now, this is a networking project. We're absolutely going to be editing the network settings. So click on Edit here and make sure that your EC2 instance is going to be launched inside your Network VPC, the VPC you just created. It is being launched inside the public subnet inside that VPC, and it's going to have, should it have a public IP address? I would love to know. Do you think it needs to have a public IP? What do you think? All right, the answer to that is actually enable. We do need a public IP address for this. So the reason for this is the fact that EC2 Instance Connect is actually going to be accessing your EC2 instance through the public internet. So EC2 Instance Connect is how we're going to be accessing like the terminal of the EC2 instance that we're about to set up. And if we weren't using EC2 Instance Connect, maybe we'd be able to directly access our EC2 instance without needing a public IP address. But because the tool that we're about to use is EC2 Instance Connect, that accesses EC2 instances through the public internet. And because it is through the public internet, we are absolutely needing a public IP address here. So let's click on Enable here. And in terms of our security group settings, what do you think? Do we need some special security group rules for this project? All right, here is a hint. You won't need to run ping tests in this project. So in previous parts of this project series, you would have had to set up a special rule so that when you run a ping test, the security group on the other side can receive those ping messages. Now, we won't need to run ping tests in this project. So what kind of inbound security group rules should we set up for this EC2 instance? What do you think? Interesting. Okay, so the answer is, all we have to do to configure our security group is give it a nice name security group, and that's it. No more other configuration needed. And the reason for this is because, look at this, when you scroll down to the inbound security group rules, by default, your EC2 instance is already going to be letting in SSH type traffic from anywhere. Look at this. The source is 0.0.0/0. So what that means is, when you're using EC2 Instance Connect later to directly access your EC2 instance, the type of traffic that EC2 Instance Connect is going to be using is SSH traffic. And SSH type traffic is absolutely necessary for us to be able to securely access an EC2 instance or a remote machine. And we talk a lot more about SSH type traffic, I would say, in Project 3 or Project 4 in this series. So look up the project that's called Connectivity Tests inside this networking project series to get access to that and to learn more about SSH. Okay, so no security group rules we need to add. So let's move on and let us do a launching of the instance. So click on Launch Instance. And let's answer this question. So, what resources did you launch in this step? I started my project by launching a VPC with a public subnet and an EC2 instance inside the public subnet. That's it. That is what we've launched. And with that is step 1 completed. Congratulations. Click on Done, and you're going to see that very satisfying green border around the task that you've just completed. That looks great. Let's move on to step 2. Now step 2 is to connect to your EC2 instance. So in this step, we're going to do that connecting directly, or really what's called direct access to that EC2 instance. And we've talked about this tool a little bit now, but we're going to be using the EC2 instance connect to do that. So in this step, what are we doing? In this step, we, since we're all doing this project together, in this step, we directly access an EC2 instance using EC2 instance connect. Cool. Again, let's click done. Oof. Watch it turn green. It's so satisfying. And let's follow the steps for connecting to that EC2 instance. Cool. Again, if you've done earlier parts of this networking project series, you'll be very familiar now with how to connect to an EC2 instance. So see if you can do that in just less than a minute, or if you can beat my time. All right, so to connect to our EC2 instance, we're going to head to our EC2 console. Again, click on the instances at the left-hand navigation bar, so you can see that you can just connect to your EC2 instance that you've just created by selecting the checkbox here. And then you can click on connect near the top. So when you click on connect near the top, you're gonna get sent to this EC2 instance connect, setup page. There's a warning here that says, yo, port 22 is open to all IPv4 addresses. So this is a bit of a security warning, a security heads up by AWS. It is concerned for you. It says, hey, by the way, currently your EC2 instance is letting in SSH traffic, which is that secure direct access type of traffic. It is letting that in for everyone. All IP addresses can currently access your EC2 instance using SSH. That is not best security practice. So this warning is saying, hey, consider narrowing down the range of addresses that your security group is letting in. We won't be needing to do that today because we're only going to be using this EC2 instance very temporarily, just during this project, but absolutely for a long-term application, a long-term solution, you are going to want to narrow down the source address CIDR block so that not any IP address can get access to your EC2 instance. But on this page, all you have to do is keep all of these default values. We don't need to change any of that. We just need to select connect. And perfect. Let us connect to the EC2 instance. Are we going to be seeing a success? Ooh, and we do. That is satisfying. It is so good to just connect right away to our EC2 instance. That feels very, very good. No errors in this part. And for the first command, we're going to try run this command called AWS S3 And this is a command that is used to list the S3 buckets in your account. And yep, ls stands for lists. So let's break this sentence down a little bit. What's happening here is right now we are seeing the terminal for your EC2 instance. And a terminal for your EC2 instance basically means you are now able to communicate or do things to your EC2 instance, to your virtual server, using commands. And when I say do things, it is things like installing something, opening a folder, opening a file, downloading, uploading, moving things around. There's so many things you can do just in this terminal using commands. And whenever you're entering a command like this, AWS S3 or any other command that we're about to do, just know that whenever you've been clicking on something, for example, you've been clicking on a button in your AWS Management Console, or if you're using a computer, you kind of like double click into a folder to go into that folder. What's truly happening is you're just using a visual interface for a command. So, for example, when you're double clicking into a folder in your local computer, what's really happening is there's a command being sent to your computer's terminal that says, oh, we are now opening this folder, show the user this folder. And all of these, and the reason why computers are just so visual in today's world is purely because it is a lot more user friendly to be using clicks and buttons instead of using commands and code. But absolutely, engineers will be facing terminals, they will be facing commands, they will be facing code all the time, and that's why we'll be doing things like this, like running these commands now. So the first command that we're going to learn is AWS S3 LS. This is a command used to list the S3 buckets in your account. Now think about this from the AWS Management Console point of view. If you were just using your AWS Management Console, what does this command look like? And I feel like visualizing that really helps you with understanding what a command does. So if we were to apply that to here, what this would look like in your AWS Management Console is probably clicking into, how about we do that right away? It would be like going into your S3 console here and then clicking into maybe the buckets page so that you can see a list of buckets just like this. That's exactly what this command is really doing. It's just showing this list of buckets, but it's done in code form, it's done in command form, so it looks slightly different. But what it does is essentially the same. It just lists these for us. Shall we just put through that command? AWS S3 LS. Enter. Oh, I did a typo there. Enter. Oof. Unable to locate credentials is the terminal's response. It says you can configure credentials by running AWS configure. Okay, cool. Well, let us run AWS configure. And in the meantime, you might also be wondering, how is it possible for us to just run a command inside a computer's terminal and be able to interact with AWS resources? The answer to that is the AWS command line interface, also called the AWS CLI. This software is the entire reason why we can actually enter commands here and still interact with AWS services like in the cloud. So this software is something that you can just install, and once you do that, you can start to control your AWS account from within the terminal. So absolutely, you'll see AWS CLI come up as a way for us to be managing our AWS account without needing to go into the management console. And absolutely, this is also a concept that comes up in the Cloud Practitioner exam or Solutions Architect as well. Okay, so as a heads up, by the way, as you advance in your cloud engineering career, you're probably going to find that the AWS CLI becomes that go-to tool for managing your AWS environment. Using this using this AWS Management Console, these like buttons and this very visual interface was so good for learning. It's so good for us to get a grasp of like entirely what is inside a service, what can you do when you're accessing a service. But once you're really familiar with those fundamentals, you're probably going to find that you're going to be using the terminal instead to do a lot of these actions because it's just so much faster. It's so much faster. Okay. Okay. Back to this terminal response. We're unable to locate credentials. And what are credentials? Credentials are like username and password. You know, that's an example of a credential. And in this example, we are needing to give our EC2 instance credentials so that it can use the services in your AWS account. It's just such an interesting concept, isn't it? Because, you know, you yourself as an IAM admin user, you absolutely have the credentials, have the access to your own AWS account and do things. But the problem is your EC2 instance isn't using the AWS Management Console, isn't logged in to an IAM admin user. Your EC2 instance needs to have its own way of getting credentials and then telling AWS like, hey, I have access to this specific account and I can do these things. So how does your EC2 instance do that? It does that by having its own type of credentials called access keys. And to clarify, it's not just EC2 instances can use access keys. All different kinds of resources or applications can use access keys. EC2 instance is just an example of it. Cool. So when you run AWS configure, it even prompts you for your access key ID, which we don't have at the moment. Okay, we don't have this access key ID to enter at the moment. So we're kind of stuck here right now. Okay, because in order for us to get access to S3 and see the list of S3 buckets, have a successful response to this command, we need to have an access key ID, and then we also need to have a password for that ID. How do we set that up? Ooh, we shall find out in the next step. But in the meantime, let us take a screenshot of what we've done so far and recording that as evidence. So let us take a screenshot. It's gonna look a little like this. I think that looks great. Does this look okay? I think it could look better. I'm gonna take a better screenshot. So let us take a better screenshot that doesn't almost cut things off at the very last line. And let us add that screenshot to our task. All right, we've taken a screenshot of our terminal showing the 2 commands we run. And let us answer a few questions. What is AWS CLI? Oof, good question. AWS CLI is a software we can download to grant oh no, not grant. It's a software we can download into a local computer's terminal so that we can have access to our AWS account and different actions without needing to use the AWS Management Console. I have access to AWS CLI because it's pre-saved, it's pre-installed in EC2 instances. Oh, it's pre-installed in EC2. I guess we can leave it at that. But if I could add one more word, I'd say I have access to AWS CLI because it's already been pre-installed in our EC2 instance. Cool. Answered. What was the first command you ran? Do we remember this? Well, I guess this gives us a pretty good indication that this is our very first command. So we can say, let us copy this, paste that in here. The first command I ran was AWS S3 ls. This command is used to list all S3 buckets inside the AWS account. And let's be clear, it is the S3 buckets that I would say that the EC2 instance or that the application has access to. So what that means is, let's say our EC2 instance does have access to our S3 buckets, but only half of them. Then when it runs AWS S3 ls, it can only, the terminal can only return, I guess, the half, the one half of all of our S3 buckets that it has access to. Next, what was the second command you ran? The second command I ran was, what was it? Do you remember? Again, let's check out the terminal to see the answer. AWS configure. Okay, so the second command I ran was AWS configure. This command is used to set up my EC2 instance's credentials in order to access my AWS environment. Cool. Let's click next. Last question for this step. So close. What are access keys? Great question. Access keys are... maybe we haven't really talked about this in detail yet, so shall we talk about it now? What are access keys? So, you know how we talked about how credentials are like usernames and passwords? Access key IDs are kind of like the username, and then there's going to be something called secret access key, and that's going to be like the password. And then access keys is like the combination of having these two, having an access key ID and having the secret access key. The combination of those two is the access keys. And truly what they are is they are credentials, for your applications, for your EC2 instance, to be able to log into AWS almost like another user, and start talking to your AWS services and resources. Now, if you've done previous parts of this networking series, you might be thinking, oh, I feel like we've done something with keys before. Yes, the other key that we've played with before is key pairs. When we were launching our EC2 instance, that was in the setup page. Do you want to set up a key pair? In this project, you know how we said, like, we don't want to set up a key pair. That key pair, that's the key pair we're talking about. Now, those key pairs are different from access keys. Let's be very clear now. Key pairs are used specifically for logging into your EC2 instance. It's almost like, let's do this analogy. It's almost like if you have a laptop in front of you, you're using the key pair to log into your laptop. And then you're going to be using the access keys to, from your laptop, now that you have access, log into AWS and use AWS. That's kind of like the difference between key pairs and access keys. So let us talk about that. Access keys are credentials that my EC2 instance plus other applications needs in order to get access to my AWS environment. i.e., interact with my AWS resources or services. Quite happy with that answer. Oh, so satisfying. Let's click done. And that is step 2 finished. And let us talk about step 3. So we've done 2 key steps now. We have created our architecture. We've also connected with our EC2 instance. And we've learned from connecting with it that we can't actually access S3 from our EC2 instance until we have something called credentials set up. So let us set up those credentials by creating access keys. And that's what this step is all about. Challenge accepted. Your EC2 instance needs credentials to access your AWS services. So let's set up access keys right away. In this step, give your EC2 instance access to your AWS environment by creating those access keys. And that's why we are here right now. We're going to be creating this little key to give to our EC2 instance. So in this step, I create access keys so that my EC2 instance can have, in this step, we create access keys so that our EC2 instance can have access to our AWS environment. Cool. Perfect. Let us add another little part to the sentence. In this step, we create access keys so that our EC2 instance can have access to our AWS environment. Specifically, the ability to interact with an S3 bucket. Oops. All right, click done. And let's get started with step 3. So we're going to be taking a little breather from EC2 Instance Connect because we're going to be visiting a new service. Ooh, what is this new service, you might ask? Well, this new service, you'll find out in a second. Type access keys in the search bar at the top here. Access keys. And you're gonna see that the first services, the first AWS service to get suggested is IAM. Correct. IAM is the service that we'll be visiting in order to set up those access keys for our EC2 instance. So let's open that in a new tab so that we can use it. All right, and in this new tab, let us go into our users, or actually, I backtrack this. Once you're in your IAM console, use the internal search bar. Actually, let's use this search bar to type in access keys again, because that's what we're here to do right now. We're here to create those access keys. We're here to give our EC2 instance access to our AWS environment. And look at that. The moment you type in access keys into the search bar, there is already a search result here that says, yeah, you can manage access keys for this specific IAM user. So click on the search result that mentions the IAM user that you are using in this project today. Make sure it matches with this name here. And then click into that search result. Boom! Just like that, you are taken to a page where you can set up those access keys. Cool. How you can find that service is by scrolling down and clicking on Create Access Key in this panel that says Access Keys. Pretty straightforward. So let's create the access key. And out of all of these options, we're going to select CLI here because what's happening is we are using, we're creating an access key so that we can go into our EC2 instance, give that access key to our EC2 instance, and then later using CLI through that instance manage our S3 bucket. So CLI absolutely is the use case here. And there are other use cases that are available as well. You can absolutely read their descriptions, their definitions in the project guide too. All right, so you might be wondering, why is it that no matter what option I pick, there is going to be a yellow banner at the bottom? Oh, except for other. But there's pretty much always going to be a yellow banner at the bottom that says alternative recommended. Yeah, so something to learn about access keys. It is the fact that actually access keys are not considered best practice for security. They even say it up top here, if you notice in the console. Avoid using long-term credentials like access keys to improve your security. So we're supposed to avoid them to improve our security posture. So the reason for this is what is usually considered best practice for a resource like an EC2 instance, for example, is that instead of creating an access key and giving your EC2 instance that key, what you actually create is an IAM role and then give that key to the role, or give that role access to whatever it can get access to, or whatever you'd like to set that IAM role to be for, and then assign that role to the EC2 instances that you like to give permission to. So there you go. So this is considered best practice because you can easily attach and detach EC2 instances from roles, to give and take away their credentials. Whereas creating not permanent, sorry, but creating an access key which can last for a very, very long time and giving that to an EC2 instance can feel a little bit risky, because what if that key just gets left inside that EC2 instance for a long time and someone else gets access to that EC2 instance in some way, shape, or form. And there's also the possibility of access keys being exposed, since when we set up AWS Configure, we literally have to type in we'll literally have to type in something called the access key ID, as well as secret access, the password. And once you put those two in, you're essentially almost making yourself a little bit vulnerable, because that information gets saved, and when it gets saved in there, it can be vulnerable to attacks, where people can try to crack into that EC2 instance and then extract that data so they can log into other EC2 instances with their access keys, and potentially cause a bit of harm in your account using that access, like deleting things or racking some big bills, all of that. And that is why actually using access keys isn't considered best practice, but it absolutely is still a very, very interesting tool to be learning about, and that's why we're using it today. Okay, so let us answer this. What is the best practice alternative to using access keys? All right, so although I'm using access keys in this project, a best practice alternative is actually to use, what should we be using instead? We should be using IAM roles with permissions attached. This is a more secure alternative. This is a more secure way to grant access to an EC2 instance, because it is much easier to track, attach, and detach IAM policies. Cool, we'll stop our answer there. And once that's done, you can click on Done here, and let's move on. Okay, so you will need to press that confirmation that you understand the above recommendation and you still want to create an access key. And once that's done, you will just have to click Next. So let us click on Next. And then for the description tag value, we'll give it a very generic description. It just needs to say this access key was created to access an S3 bucket from an EC2 instance. And next to VPC project. Let's click on Create Access Key. Okay, and stay on this page. Do you see that palm? Talk to the palm. The palm says stay. Oh, the palm says stay, so we're gonna stay. And what's happening here is this page gives you that username and that password that your EC2 instance is gonna need. And look at this. Look at what that green banner says. This is the only time that the secret access key can be viewed or downloaded. This is the only time that your password can be accessed. You cannot recover it later. However, you can create new access keys, but just look at how important it is to be keeping your secret access key somewhere safe. And because of all of the complexities with having to keep a secret access key, potentially losing it, potentially exposing it, potentially giving it to someone else. That is why using IAM roles is considered a bit more stress-free. It's considered a bit more straightforward as well. All right, when you're here though, what we want to do is we want to actually download the CSV file, download this spreadsheet that's going to save those details for us. The thing is, once you've downloaded that file, please don't forget to delete this file and this access key that you've created at the end of your session. Even if you don't finish this project today, that's totally okay and it happens. Please make sure you delete that access key and you delete that spreadsheet so that it's safe from anyone else getting access to it. Cool, let's answer a few questions now. What is a secret access key? Oof, great question. Secret access keys are, dun dun dun, secret access keys are like passwords for our access keys or credentials. You would need secret access keys as authentication, or actually not you, but technically you, our EC2 instance or other applications would need secret access keys as authentication and log in to our AWS environment. Awesome. Let us click done to finish that up. Done. Okay. And you know what? Let's also, once you've downloaded it, you can click done to finish, or really, you can actually just stay on this page since your access key has already been created. You don't need to click done to finalize or anything like that. I like to personally keep this tab open just in case I need to refer back to my access key and my secret access key, and I can just access that from here and copy it straight away for the rest of this project. Even if that spreadsheet, that CSV file has been downloaded, you could say I am almost like on the paranoid end and would always love to have a backup option just in case. So yeah, access keys are done though. So we have set them up, and that means we are ready to jump back into our EC2 instance, and let's give it another go. Let us now configure our EC2 instance's access to our AWS resources. So let us set this up. To enter your AWS access key ID, you can open up the spreadsheet that you've downloaded. Okay, you can open this up. There you go. And once you open it up, you'll be able to see your access key ID, and then there's also the secret access key, so that's the password, all here in this spreadsheet. So you can just copy it like this, press Command C, and then you can paste it like this, click enter. You know, you can do this. And then the other thing you could do is you could actually just open up that backup tab and also directly press this icon to copy it straight away. You know, we can do that for our secret access key, for example. Copy that straight away. And then paste that in the AWS secret access key line. Press enter. Done. So you've just given your EC2 instance a set of username and passwords, well, one set of a username and a password to log in to your AWS account and get access to your AWS resources. Nice work. Now there's also a few other things that we're going to be setting up so that your EC2 instance is actually ready to start using your AWS resources. The first thing is your default region. You know how when you log into the AWS account and you usually already have a region picked in your dashboard. Same goes for your EC2 instance. It's about to log into your AWS account. It deserves to have a default region just sitting there that gets used if you're not specifying a specific region. Okay, and in order for us to put through a default region name, click on your region, you know, next to your IAM admin user name on your console. There should be this drop down as well. And then you're going to find the code, or really the little label or the tag related to your region that you're on. And you're going to copy, and then you're going to paste that into the default region name. Done. Oh, I just realized. Oh, have we skipped the step by accident? Oh, we might have. I just realized we might have been using, we might have just been doing the first few steps of step 5. Apologies, everyone. We're about to jump back into step 4. Wow, it was just such an easy flow that we actually just ended up in step 5. But those two steps are quite interchangeable at a certain point, so we're going to be switching very, very soon. Okay, so I can't believe that happened. So for the next field, your default output format, do you see how it currently has none set to it as well? Well, actually, for our default output format, we don't really need to set it to anything specific. We can actually just keep a blank one and press enter on your keyboard, and that's done. So you might be wondering, what is a default output format? So a default output format is basically how the results of your commands will display. So, for example, you're about to run a few commands that's going to be doing things like delete this bucket, list what buckets I have, list what objects are inside this specific bucket. You're going to be doing some, I would say, specific commands that's going to give you specific outputs to show you whether something was successful, to show you whether you've downloaded something. It's almost like a response from the terminal based on what command you give it. That default output format is basically your terminal kind of saying, or AWS CLI saying, what kind of language do you want me to speak when I give you that response? Do you want me to speak in JSON, which is the default, and we're using JSON since we haven't put through a specific value, or we haven't put through a specific format. But there are other formats out there too. There's text, table, YAML. All of these are almost like different languages or different ways or different formats that your terminal can give you responses back. Cool. And if you haven't used JSON yet before, by the way, JSON is pretty much a format for storing and exchanging data, and it's very, very easy for both humans and computers to use, which is why it's a default. It's like a crowd favorite. And you'll get to use JSON. You get to see it in action in just a second too. Okay, so in the meantime, let us go back to step 4. My goodness, can't believe we skipped an entire step just now, and go through step 4 as well. Cool. Step 4, we're going to create an S3 bucket with 2 files inside. So now that you have your access keys, and your access keys again is pretty much your EC2 instances, username and password to get access to your AWS account, we're going to create a bucket. And the reason why we're going to create a bucket is because we're later going to try use your EC2 instance. So we're later going to try use this terminal to access the bucket you're going to create and do things to that bucket. But in order for us to do anything, we need to create the bucket itself. So let us do that. And how we're going to do that? Oh, we're going to type in this answer first. In this step, I launch an Amazon S3 bucket. In this step, I launch an Amazon S3 bucket with 2 files inside. This S3 bucket will be accessed by my EC2 instance later in the project to test how my EC2 instance, to test whether my access keys have successfully given my EC2 instance the access to my AWS resources. Okay, I don't think this sentence is a beautiful sentence, so we can tidy this up a little bit. In this step, I launch an Amazon S3 bucket with 2 files inside. This S3 bucket will be accessed by my EC2 instance later in the project. Okay, we are saying this S3 bucket will be accessed by my EC2 instance later in this project. So we can test whether my access keys have successfully given my EC2 instance has successfully given access, have given had whether my access keys have whether my access key has successfully given AWS access to my EC2 instance. I think that sentence is a little bit better, a little bit happier now. Let's click done. Perfect. Okay. Next, now that we have access to Amazon S3 already, if you don't have that Amazon S3 console in front of you, all you have to do is search S3 in the search bar at the top and click on the search result here. And now you have access to S3, the console. Very nice. And when you're here, we're going to go straight to clicking on Create Bucket. Okay, so we're going to create a bucket and let's set it up now. Bucket setup is so simple, so stick with us. It's not going to take too long, even if this is your first time. And we're going to keep the bucket type to just general purpose. We're not doing anything too special with the bucket. And for the bucket name, we're just going to do Nextwork VPC project, your name. And don't forget to change your name to your own name or your nickname. And don't forget the reason why it is going to be so important for us to customize this name a little bit is because bucket names must be unique within the global namespace. If you've done our very first storage project, this is going to ring a bell for you. Absolutely, all bucket names have to be unique in the entire world. No other bucket in this entire world can have the exact same name. And that's why and actually, that is such an interesting link between that and the fact that our S3 bucket just lives outside of the world of a VPC. Because we definitely don't have this issue with EC2 instances which are living inside a VPC. Multiple EC2 instances can have the exact same instance name, but bucket names have to be unique inside the global namespace. And that's because they don't belong into any VPC, they all just belong into one big bucket. You can think of just like this one big area or one big bucket inside the AWS region that just consists of all the S3 buckets in the entire world ever created. So since they all share the exact same space, two buckets can't have the same name. Otherwise, it's gonna be confusion around which bucket are you referring to when you say this name. But because things like VPCs exist to give us our own personal network or our isolated area of our AWS region, we can do things like having resources with the same name or having resources with overlapping IP addresses with another VPC. All of that is possible because VPCs literally exist to give us that privacy or that isolated network. Yeah, having that link between the fact that, an S3, Amazon S3, between the fact that an Amazon S3 lives outside of a VPC and also the fact that bucket names have to be unique within the global namespace. Yeah, pretty cool link. Pretty cool link to establish. Cool. And yeah, so don't forget to replace your name with your name. And we're just going to leave all the other default settings. We're going to go create the bucket. Looks good. And then we're going to go straight into uploading files into that bucket. Yeah, are you ready? Are you ready? So what we're going to do is we're going to go for, click into Nextwork VPC project your name. Okay, and once you clicked into here, you can click on upload. Okay, so you're going to click on upload and then just upload any 2 files. Doesn't matter what file you upload, by the way. Maybe smaller files would mean that they upload faster, but other than that, it doesn't matter what files you upload. So pick any two. And how you can upload files is by selecting Add Files here, and then selecting the two files from your local computer. Now, if you still don't know what files you want to upload, you're feeling a little indecisive right now, here are two files you can download. So all you have to do is right click this, okay? Click on Save Link As, and then click Save, and it's going to save right away. Same with this one. Right click Save Link As, and then click Save, so it saves as a PNG file, as a picture file. And yes, I already have these saved, so they're already right here. So I'm going to bring them up. I love those two images, by the way. Those images that hold a very close place to our hearts. Oh, it's taking my time trying to find these. Where did it go? Okay, let me go try find these. Okay, I see it now. This is the first one. It's called Next with Denzel is awesome. Shout out to Denzel and your lovely words about the Next with community. And then the other image is Next with Lilo is awesome. So a shout out to Lilo for all of the kind words that you shared about the community too. This is so cool. Alright, so we're gonna just select both images and upload those into our bucket. And let us click upload. Done. Oh, just gonna make sure, do we have any screenshots to take? We do. We just have to click on upload first. Very nice. And once it's done, we are going to go into our buckets objects tab. Okay, this exact panel. And then we're gonna take a screenshot. So let's take that screenshot now. Beautiful. I would say this looks pretty good. This looks pretty nice. Poof. And let's drag that screenshot over. Drag it over. Very nice. Okay, once it's done, let us answer a quick question. I also set up, what did we set up? I also set up an S3 bucket with two files inside. Cool, let's click done. All created. Very nice. And then for this one, we have just done the first half of the step, but absolutely we can add a little answer to this as well to remind ourselves what were we doing in this step in general. So now that you have your S3 bucket created, this step is all about directly accessing your EC2 instance, which we have done with EC2 Instance Connect, and then using the terminal to try run commands so that we can control our S3 bucket from within this EC2 instance without having to go through the AWS Management Console. Cool. So let us bring that answer into this page here. We are using, in this step, we are using AWS CLI commands to try control, manage our S3 bucket. This means we're interacting with our S3 bucket through our EC2 instance, slash VPC instead of the management console. So good, man. Just such a good skill to have, learning AWS CLI. It goes a really long way. Management console. Very nice. So we're going to click done here as well to finish off our answer. And then we're going to scroll down up to the step to the last step that we haven't done. Yeah, so perfect. This is where we left off. In EC2 Instance Connect, we've left off right at entering the default output format. So let us answer this question. What was the purpose of the AWS configure command? This thing right here. So to set up my EC2 instance to interact with my AWS environment, I configured an access key ID, and you can absolutely refer to these parts of the terminal for help as well. I configured an access key ID, secret access key, default region, and a default output format. Those are the 4 things that you configured over here. So very, very well done. We can click on done right here. And let us do something. Let us try run that very first command we learned about earlier in this project, and let's see what happens. Now that we have access keys, we have access to our S3 buckets. So what's going to be the outcome? What's going to be the result of running this command? AWS S3 ls, enter. The provided region name doesn't match the supported format. That's my typo, everyone. As you can see in this little response from the terminal, do you see how there's like a little blank space here? This blank space shouldn't be there, and that has caused a bit of an error. And the reason why that blank space exists definitely was a little bit of an error on my side. I would have done something to add these little characters to the response. We don't need that. So let us fix this. AWS configure. Okay, let us set up our, let us again give the password to our access key ID, which is the secret access key. Oh, whoopsies. Let us actually just put this through US West 2. Default output format. Let's click enter here. Okay, I think there was a bit of a mistake actually with the AWS access key ID. What we're supposed to do here is actually just enter the AWS access key ID in this field instead of overriding this and replacing it with our secret access key. We shouldn't be doing that. So let us run AWS configure one more time. Okay, and let us this time properly put through the correct access key ID. And then for the secret access key, let us again put through the right secret access key. And then here for the default region name, we can put through the correct value now, US West 2. Make sure there's no extra spaces at the end. Let's enter that. We don't need the default output format. JSON works fine, so let's enter that. Okay, back on track. Let us run AWS S3 ls. Phew, look at that. We have a successful response. That always feels so good, doesn't it? And our responses might look slightly different. And the reason for that is because our list of buckets probably look a little bit different. We have a few other buckets other than the one we've created today in our account right now. So your list of buckets will probably look different from this. And because of that, look at that. By running that command, AWS CLI, so snazzy, has given us a response. It's given us a list of all of the buckets in your AWS account. How useful is that? Very, very handy. You know, we're using EC2 Instance Connect to see this, but if you install AWS CLI into your local terminal, you'll be able to do this from your local machine as well. So super, super handy. And just to confirm, Make sure you can actually see your newest bucket's name in this list so that you can confirm that it's a success. Next, look VPC, project your name. Okay, so let's take a screenshot of our terminal's response. Cool. It's gonna look a little like this. Drag that into the space here. Oopsie daisies. I dragged it a bit too far. Let us do that one more time, team. Let us take a screenshot of the terminal's response. Let's drag that into our project guide. Phew, it's uploaded now. Very good. And let's answer this question. When I ran the command, the terminal responded with this indicated. Very good question. So when I ran the command AWS S3ls, again, the terminal responded with a list of my S3 buckets. Awesome. This indicated that my access key works. I feel like this is actually such a milestone moment, and we should have celebrated a bit more. So apologies for my mild reaction just now, but woo! Your access key works. And your access key works, i.e., your EC2 instance has access to your AWS environment. 200 IQ, everyone. That is genius work. That's so cool. It is the start of a really amazing skill set, using the AWS CLI. So if this is your very first time using AWS CLI, just know that you've unlocked something huge here. All right, so let's click done. Task completed. Very nice. And we're almost at the final stretch now. We're gonna next run this command that looks very similar actually to what we've just run. Do you see how the first three parts are exactly the same? AWS S3ls, but there's an extra bit at the end. What do you think this command does? Before we run it, what do you think this command does? AWS S3ls, and we remember ls stands for lists. And then there's also a bit of something at the end there. This part at the very end contains the name of our S3 bucket. So what do you think it does? Let's run it and find out. Oops. Run it. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Look at what's in our terminal now. You are seeing a list of the objects inside your bucket. So now you've learned not only how to see the list of all buckets in Amazon S3, you've also just gone another level deeper. You now know how to see a list of the objects inside a specific bucket. This is the two files that we uploaded, the two images that we uploaded. If you've uploaded your own files from your local machine earlier in this project into your S3 bucket, this is probably going to look a little different. It's probably going to have the names of the objects that you've uploaded instead of these names, which are the names of the images I uploaded. Okay, so that was another huge success. So let us record this command that we've learned and add that to our documentation. So let's take a screenshot here. Okay, let's take that screenshot. It's looking fly. And let us drag that screenshot again into our project. Okay, another CLI command I ran was, which returned, okay, another CLI command I ran was, you can absolutely copy and paste this from earlier in the project guide. So you can click here again to copy it. Let's paste that here. Another CLI command I ran was AWS S3 ls. And then this is basically a pathway to the S3 bucket, which returned a list of objects inside my S3 bucket. Okay, nice. Looks good. Let's click done to finish that up. And we're at the final stretch for this final step. Did you know you could actually upload files using AWS CLI as well? This is really, really cool. So in this step, in this final part of this step, you're gonna learn how to create a file and then upload that file into your S3 bucket, all within your EC2 instances terminal. So the first command we're gonna run looks slightly different. Doesn't start with AWS S3 anymore. It starts with sudo. Sudo stands for super user do. It is a very, very, very popular common command to use for local machines. So sudo is something you would run not to interact with AWS, it is just to manage your own local computer. In this case, we're doing something called sudo touch. Sudo touch basically means that we're going to create an empty file. Touch is basically the command for creating an empty file, or if that file name that you're about to define, this file name, if that file already exists, then it just means updating the last time we accessed this object. But in our case, have we created any file inside this EC2 instance? No, we haven't. This is going to be the very first file we're creating locally inside this instance. So we're very, very unlikely to have this object exist already, which means Touch is going to create a new blank file called this name, called test.txt. Now, if you're wondering, what is the /tmp/text test.txt? /tmp basically just means we're going into a folder inside your EC2 instance called tmp, and then inside that folder, we're going to create a file called test.txt. And again, if this folder doesn't exist, Touch is just going to create that as well. So anyway, let's run that through. Sudo touch /tmp/test.txt. Let's press enter. Blank file created right inside your EC2 instance. How cool is that? So this is what we've just run is exactly the same as if you were to go into Notepad if you're using Windows, or if you were to use TextEdit if you're using a Mac, and you create a blank file and you save that file inside a folder inside your computer. You probably know how to do that using clicks. You know, clicking on this app, clicking save, clicking save when it comes to deciding what location you're saving this file. You must be very, very familiar with knowing how to do that using clicks inside your computer. And what we've done just now is the same thing, but just with a command, you know, command or code instead of clicks. Alrighty. Final command. Are you ready? We're going to run this command, and let's break it down first before we copy it and run it actually, so that we can try guess what this does. Okay, so this command says AWS. Okay, so we're going to be doing something in our AWS environment right now. AWS S3 CP stands for copy. That's the hint I'll give you. And then there is this command tmp. There's not this command. There's this file test.txt, and then again it is your S3 bucket right over here. What do you think this command does? So this command, we're about to reveal it now, is going to upload the file that you've created here into the bucket that you've defined here. So CP stands for copy, and what that really means is like copy this file, put it here, So let's run that. So let's copy this and let's run that in our EC2 instances terminal. Whoa, do you see that response? There was a response that says upload ... They've uploaded this file to the S3 bucket. No way. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Ah, so cool. And if you like some validation that it's been uploaded, you can run the same command for listing listing all of the objects inside a bucket. Run this command again to see the results. So let's run this. Okay, look at that. So you can see that there are the 2 objects that you've uploaded manually. And then there's also one more, which is your test.txt, the file that you've just created, and it has 0 bytes. That's why it has 0 right over here. Okay, so well done on doing some very, very successful commands with your EC2 instance using AWS CLI. And let us do one more task. Let us complete one more task. So let's take a screenshot of our terminal with these commands put through. And let's put that into our documentation. Awesome. We're going to drag that in here. Looking beautiful. What was the first command? To upload a new file to my bucket, I first ran the command. What do we do? This command creates. Okay, so to upload a new file to the bucket, the first command we ran was sudo touch. So let's copy this and let's put that in here. This command creates a blank file called test.txt in my local EC2 instances local directory. Okay, it doesn't automatically upload it to Amazon S3 buckets, doesn't upload it to anywhere on the public internet. All it does is it creates this blank file, saves it within your EC2 instance. And let us talk about the second command. So the second command we ran, it had, here, right here, AWS S3 CP copy, and then there were 2 other parts of that command, and let's talk about that in here. So the second command I ran was this lovely long command here. This command will copy, i.e. upload, the blank file created into my S3 bucket. That's exactly what it does. Very happy with that response. And let's move on to the last question. What was the third command you ran? So the third command we ran was this one right here. The third command I ran was this bad boy over here, which returned a list of all objects in my S3 bucket, including test.txt. This validated that my AWS CLI command, that my EC2 instance, this validated that using my EC2 instance and CLI commands lets me actually, we're going to change the sentence a little bit. This validated that my EC2 instance through AWS CLI commands can get access to other AWS services like S3. And let us click Done to complete that. You can even validate things by switching tabs back to your S3 bucket. I love this part. And then you can click into your S3 bucket next to VPC project your name. Click on that refresh button. Ta-da! You can see test.txt is right there. So great validation that it all works. Super cool. A file you've created in your EC2 instance now lives in your S3 bucket. Isn't that crazy? I think that's the craziest part, knowing that somewhere far, far away in the region that you've picked, in the availability zone that you've picked, a server is hosting an EC2 instance, and that virtual computer created a file locally, and then you, through the terminal of that EC2 instance, said, oh yeah, that file we've created, upload that into S3. So the EC2 instance, uploaded that file into S3, and now you, yourself, through the AWS Management Console on the other side, can see the file that's been uploaded by EC2 instance. It's just such a magical moment, actually, to see the way that these things get created and now just show up in front of you. So nice work. You've just completed today's project, and let us wrap up with a few final words. Amazon S3, Amazon VPC is AWS's foundational networking project, networking service that allows us to create our own isolated networks within an AWS region and control network traffic and security, etc. How did you use Amazon VPC in today's project? In today's project, what do we do? I really do prefer using we, so let us switch back to using we. We launched a VPC with a public subnet and EC2 instance. What else did we do here? We also directly accessed or managed an Amazon S3 bucket through the EC2 instance using AWS CLI. That was an awesome skill. Next, what is one thing you didn't expect in this project? Ooh, a very personalized question. What is one thing we didn't expect? We didn't expect, sorry to speak on behalf of everyone, a great, a potential thing that you might have been surprised by. We didn't expect that access keys are required for EC2 instances, other applications to get access to my AWS environment. Last bit, how much time did this project take you? 90 minutes is the rough guess, including demo time. Looks good. So let's click save or click done to finalize our answers. And let us delete our resources. So before you actually dive into the steps for deleting your resources, the suggestion is always pause this video right now. Here's your chance to pause. Pause the video so that you can give it a go by yourself. Try deleting all of the resources you've created today by yourself. See if you can do it, because being able to keep track of all the resources you've created and being able to delete them one by one without needing a step-by-step guide for it is going to be such a great skill. Eventually, you're going to be creating your own projects. Eventually, you're going to want to be able to gauge what resources you've created and delete them so you never get charged for those. So yeah, The challenge or the recommendation is to pause this video or to stop your step-by-step guide exactly at this moment so you don't get a step-by-step guide on how to delete these objects. Okay, press play. Keep going if you would like to do this with someone else, or if you like a bit of guides, or if you like to validate your work and check that you've deleted everything. So let's do this together too. We can always do that too. Okay, first thing we're going to delete is the S3 bucket. So we're going to go into our buckets page again. We can select the little radio button next to your S3 bucket, and let's click delete. If you like to be straightforward, let's just delete it straight away. And you're gonna see, oh, you can't actually delete a bucket with objects inside. So you're gonna have to click on empty bucket to clear out all of the objects inside first, the 3 files that's in there. Let's delete those, permanently delete them. Okay, empty our bucket. And then let us now delete the bucket entirely. Next week, VPC project your name. Put that through, delete that bucket, we don't need it anymore. And it's gone. All right, first service, done. Next one, I think we're ready to delete the EC2 instance. So, this should be what it looks like, your screen. And then you can click on the EC2 instance, select the checkbox next to it, select instance state, terminate that instance, terminator. We don't need that EC2 instance anymore. Thank you so much for today, and we'll use an EC2 instance next time. Next service, VPCs. Yeah, we absolutely created a VPC today, so let's delete that VPC, shall we? Click on your VPCs, refresh, give it a refresh, and then try to select the checkbox next to your VPC, select actions, select delete VPC. This always happens. So always, if your EC2 instance is still in the middle of getting terminated, your VPC will have to wait. It's going to have to wait until your EC2 instance is completely terminated, completely done, before you can delete the VPC itself. While you're waiting though, there is another service there is another resource we can delete. Can you remember what that resource is? It's super important. It's very important that we delete it. We even warned you about it. So that resource is your access key. So remember this access key, this bad boy that consists of an access key as well as a secret access key. This is such an important thing to delete because anyone that sees it can grab it, run it locally with AWS CLI, and get access to your AWS account. Now, actually seeing that access key is going to be the hard part. I would say access keys are usually kept very, very securely, but absolutely, it's best practice to delete access keys you don't need, so there's less of a chance of any attacker ever getting access to them. Cool. So in my case, I'm going to click done at the bottom of the screen, but if this is a console, this is the page that you're seeing, all you have to do is click actions, click delete, and then you're going to deactivate the access key before you can delete it. So let's click on deactivate. Okay, and once it's deactivated, you can enter the access key ID, which you can just copy right away from the header here, and then paste that in here to delete the access key. Beautiful work, it's done. Okay, so now that the access key is done, really the last final resource we haven't deleted yet is the VPC, which we've been wanting to wait for. Let us refresh and check it one more time. Can we delete our VPC now? Let's see. Perfect, we can. So there are these green ticks that tells us we can delete the VPC. And then we can simply just type delete in the text field, and we're all done. Let us click delete here. I love that the VPC, it's not just the VPC that gets deleted, it's also all of the other resources that got created by default. For example, if we were to click on subnets, and let's click on that refresh button, you can see there's no more public one subnet that was automatically generated for us. Same with route tables. Look, there was this route table that was set up for us by default, but let's refresh and that's gone. Internet gateways, same story. Just refresh the page and you see that it's gone once you delete your VPC. Same with network ACLs and security groups too. You can always double check if you'd like, just in case anything somehow didn't delete. But you can see all of the security groups and the network ACLs. They are always default ones inside an AWS account, but outside of those default ones, just like the network ACL you saw just now at the top row, they just get deleted. So good, so good. Okay. Congratulations, you have deleted all of your resources, and you've also just completed this entire project. How good is that? Woo! Amazing work. And it is time to share your work with the world. Let people know what an amazing job you've just done by scrolling all the way to the bottom, clicking on that blue Mission Accomplished button, and then you can download your documentation. You can click on this to download it. Okay, the file should show up in your downloads folder. And you can even click on share on LinkedIn to share your work on LinkedIn today. I'm gonna actually pull that into the main window so you can see just this pre-filled LinkedIn post that has been written for you. The moment you click on that share on LinkedIn button, it's gonna be the same result. And all you have to do is click on this X, change this into an actual tag. So double click on the words next work and then change this into a tag like this. Okay, and then you just have to click on the plus button, click on more, click on that document icon, choose a file, and pick this this documentation that's been created for you. Doesn't this look amazing? Amazing stuff. This looks so cool. So all of this work was a collation of all of the screenshots that you've uploaded, all of the answers that you've put through for all of the tasks. It's created this lovely, amazing documentation. And all you have to do is upload that, give it a title, for example, accessing S3 from my VPC. And then once that's uploaded, you just have to click done here, and then you'll be all set. Click done. And you'll be all set to click post and push it out to the world. Very, very nice. Congratulations. And let us head back to this AWS console. But you are actually all done for today. Woo! Look at you go, man. Look at you go. You know, that's another networking project done. Look at what amazing stuff you've created. You've learned some new things, that's for sure. Access keys is just one of them. AWS CLI was huge. And you can even see a summary of those skills here. Today you've learned how to set up access keys for an EC2 instance. You learned how to interact with S3 through the AWS CLI. So we have one more project in this entire networking series, and you can look forward to this last one because it's very, very well connected with all of the hard work you've put into this project. A teaser for your next project. So your EC2 instance definitely has access to your bucket. We've got that ticked off. Your access key definitely works. But your EC2 instance is currently accessing that bucket through the public internet. This isn't the most secure way to communicate because external threats and attacks can intercept that traffic and get access to your AWS environment or read that sensitive data that's been transmitted between your bucket as well as your EC2 instance. So traffic can be intercepted when it is done through the public internet, and that's what's currently happening. So what is a VPC resource that could solve this issue? Introducing VPC endpoints. In the next project, you're going to learn how to directly go from your EC2 instance and let traffic go here, get directed by a route table to this special component called a VPC endpoint. And then from there, from the VPC endpoint, travel directly to your S3 bucket so it doesn't have to go through the public internet anymore. And then just like that, it is secure, it is direct, a lot safer from vulnerabilities and attacks. That is such a cool project to look forward to. In the meantime, well done on completing another project. It is just such a special occasion. We've created a one-of-a-kind trophy for you because you are a networking pro in the making. And As a final note, we hope you have had a lot of fun with this project. If you have any questions, ask the Nextdoor community. The link to that is also in the description box. And we look forward to seeing you again in the next project. All right, so that was a wrap. That was so much fun. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.